quick question about like the MrBeast thing is, did that open your eyes at all about like what was possible for a creator in the sense of like he's now spending upwards of like $3 million per video? Obviously that video probably costs a shit ton of money. Like in terms of like you look at the per episode costs on TV for a lower budget TV show is somewhere like $2 to $3 million per episode. Did that open your eyes of like maybe this is the future of YouTube? Is it's eventually just going to become TV?
One of the things that's really wonderful when you work there is the conviction that, you know, there's a certainty that YouTube is really going to be perhaps the destination in a way for entertainment, and also the conviction that you tell the best possible story with what you got. There's certainly a sense that they over there at MrBeast there's a little Wild West mentality, but they're really actually very thoughtful about what they do. Just they want to give the audience the best possible experience. I believed in that. I believed in that since I studied film, but to see it practiced so passionately and authentically was a great refresher in what really matters when you make content. And absolutely, yeah, YouTube is going to continue to grow and it's going to redefine how we think about the mechanisms that we receive entertainment.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. For most of his career, Scott Brown has operated at the crossroads of Hollywood and the creator economy. After first breaking into digital media during the early days of web series, Scott went on to work across a wide swath of the modern media ecosystem. His resume includes producing hundreds of hours of Larry King programming for streaming platforms, helping Dwayne Johnson launch a YouTube channel that quickly surpassed 1 million subscribers, and even producing large-scale stunts for MrBeast. Throughout that journey, Scott developed a front-row seat to how digital platforms were steadily reshaping the economics and creative possibilities of entertainment. Today, Scott believes the next major shift is already underway: the rise of microdramas, short, vertically shot scripted series designed for smartphones and often monetized episode by episode inside dedicated apps. In our conversation, Scott explained how he stumbled upon the emerging format, why he believes it represents the first truly native form of scripted storytelling for phones, and how his own microdrama projects are helping push the medium toward higher production quality. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Scott, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I'm super excited to talk to you because you have a lot of experience in the creator economy, in traditional media, but then also you are working in this kind of new burgeoning genre and format called microdramas that's getting a lot of coverage in the trade press. So I'm super excited to cover all aspects of your career. I was looking at your LinkedIn before this, and it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like your way of breaking into media was actually, you know, before the modern day creator economy even existed. I saw that you created basically a web series going back, I think in like 2009, 2010. Was that your entry into media, or was that like a side project that you were doing?
No, so in a lot of, digital has been my home my entire career. When I started, I got out of film school with a degree in screenwriting just in time for the writer's strike of 2007 and 8. And, I quickly discovered, I worked at a company actually that was at the time doing something that they believed was possible, cataloging every single piece of online video so that people could find it through manual data entry. And that led me to discover web series. There was actually a web series by Michael Cera that really inspired me, called Clark and Michael. And I discovered the world of web TV that was happening then, and I made a web series called Blue Movies that was fortunate to receive 1 million views on its first episode when that was really significant, and that started my journey into digital. Digital has been my home, now getting close to 20 years working in what is now called the creator economy. But for me, it's just been this area of the entertainment industry that I've been with since YouTube was a dating website.
Yeah. Well, you said you went to film school. Did you dream of being like a more traditional filmmaker? Like what was, when you were in film school, where did you think you were going to be in like 10 years? Yeah.
Well, I think whenever one endeavors to pursue something in the entertainment industry, there are the goals. And yeah, of course, like the idea of, being able to direct movies and TV, write movies and TV, directing is my deepest and truest love, but the creator economy gets you, doing so many other things. And yeah, I wanted to go into those worlds, but looking back on it, and especially now, I truly can say that The things that I really love are the collaboration, telling stories with people. I love being on sets. I love getting into edits and, making stories really resonate with people. But yeah, that was the original goal for sure.
So like in 2008, 2009, like, sites like Funny or Die were like maybe creating some stuff. Netflix was just getting into streaming, but there weren't really many people making like a living in web video. Like, did you think of that as like a segue into something? Like, how did you kind of think of the framing of like creating the web series?
Yeah, so everyone, I think at the time, not everyone, but a lot of people at the time, it felt there was this energy, and it felt like we were just a couple of years away from all of a sudden this thing that we had discovered in the same way that perhaps music videos in the 90s had allowed many creators to do things that they wanted to do. We felt that web series would get us there, and it didn't go, that certainly didn't happen as fast as we all thought. But yeah, the initial goal, the idea was that this would be a way into traditional Hollywood, absolutely.
Yeah, so like someone who was important would see your web series and be like, I want to hire that guy, or I want to have a lunch with that guy, which would then lead to some other opportunity or something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly, and it did happen. For example, Brian Robbins, his team had seen some of my work and hired me to create and direct ancillary content for their television show on Spike TV, Blue Mountain State. What has been true of my career is that it's always led to other opportunities within digital. The one leap that never really happened for me is this idea that they would then give me an opportunity to go into film and TV, right? And I've been fortunate that the really wonderful opportunities in digital kept coming to me, right? So I just kept evolving with digital as digital evolved.
So let's talk about that. So you said, like, was the Spike TV, was that the first big opportunity? Like, I know you've worked with like Larry King Live, you've also worked with MrBeast, you helped The Rock with his YouTube stuff. What was kind of so you do the web series, it gets like 1 million views. Like, what was that first phone call, or what was that first job after that?
Yeah, the first job really was it was that Spike TV opportunity. I had done actually 2 web series, and I'm surviving in LA. I'm working, doing odd jobs here and there. Getting paid opportunities to be a cinematographer sometimes on low budget projects. Directing, like I directed a couple plays even that compensated me. But ultimately, it was that opportunity to go to Montreal and live there for 3 months and shoot. We made 60 videos that were both scripted and unscripted within the world of the show, Blue Mountain State, and that was the first moment where it felt like, oh wow, I am able to generate opportunities that would not be, they're not like on a job board, right? Like these are opportunities that come from word of mouth, which often most of the big opportunities that I've received in my life have come from, and that was the beginning of seeing, oh wow, like notoriety in this space leads to other notable opportunities.
And were those videos, they were kind of like marketing for the TV show, kind of? Like, was that how the Spike TV kind of thought of them? Or was it, I mean, obviously these were early days of streaming and stuff like that. How did they think about it?
Well, it was really actually the impetus of Eric Falconer, the creator of the show. He really wanted, he had seen some things that I believe Smallville was doing that were really smart, and he just felt like there was this opportunity to create ancillary content, expand the world of the show, right? Not only did we do behind the scenes things, but we had main characters give us, tours in character. We even created an original series that was set in the world of the show that was shot as any show would be shot, single camera, shooting coverage based on a script, the actors. So it was really it was about promoting the main show through giving fans material that would continue to keep them excited from week to week.
So as you're doing this, obviously YouTube is picking up steam, and there's this emerging creator economy that's happening. Do you think if you had been born like 10 years later that you wouldn't have even bothered trying to do the Hollywood thing, that you might have like just tried to come up through the creator economy?
That's a great question. 10 years later, I don't think I would have, because I so love scripted storytelling, right? My deepest passion is to be able to work with actors on a set and to, synthesize, even if it's just a funny joke, like some kind of a truth from fiction, right? That's the thing that I love the most. And 10 years later, I don't think those opportunities were really in the digital ecosystem. I think that's really what is notable about this time now. But maybe 20 years later, if I was just getting my career started, I actually just saw a student from USC at a panel I did yesterday, and I just really told her, like, you're in a really exciting time. There's so much happening where there's scripted opportunities for people who are ready to, roll up their sleeves and work at relatively lower budgets to showcase their work.
Yeah, and this is kind of a theme I write about in my newsletter, is that, like, people like Darman are kind of like the canary in the coal mine of, like, where scripted is going, and eventually the economics of YouTube will support, I think, like, prestige TV, scripted TV, in digital media. And I don't think I've written about this in the newsletter specifically, but I think of Darman. I don't know if you know the story of Tyler Perry and how he came up through Hollywood. Is like, he couldn't break into traditional Hollywood. He was doing, like, plays for his church, and basically just through, like, pure hustle and what people would consider lowbrow, which is how a lot of people think of Darman, he basically just built his own studio system and then scaled up from there. And I think, like, Darman kind of, like, and a few other creators kind of represent that same, like, burgeoning niche. So you think if, like, 20 years later you had been born, then maybe you would be coming, like, trying to do scripted stuff in the creator economy.
I mean, I am doing scripted stuff in the creator economy right now, right? Like, that's how much I believe in it, right? And when the low highbrow piece is, I think, a really good observation, because I went to film school. I'm a student of the history of entertainment, and when you think about, like, Charlie Chaplin's career, right? Like, well before he was doing City Lights, a lot of his work was being derided as being lowbrow, and certainly some of his earliest stuff, he's fallen down a lot, but as his career progresses, he eventually gets to a place where he's giving one of the greatest monologues in cinema history, right, with The Great Dictator, but he's still being chased around by a rocket, And so it's really interesting to watch how mediums evolve. And I think that's an important thing to think about, and a personal belief of mine is, even though digital comes to us often on devices that we also consume television on, I actually do believe that, especially the phone, is really a new medium. And because of the newness of the medium, it's got its own grammar. It's got its own relationship to the audience. It's got its own relationship to the economics of consumable art, right? And so I just really believe that we're just getting started, and that's the context that I continue to look at everything through.
So after the Spike TV thing, it seems like you kind of went back and forth between the traditional media and streaming, like Hulu. I think you worked with Larry King as, like, a producer, and then but you were also working strictly in the creator economy. Were you going back and forth? Were you doing both simultaneously? Like, what? Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that part of your career.
Right. So when I've done Blue Mountain State, and I've done some other different projects, and then I get an opportunity. Larry King is relaunching his show on Hulu, and I think it's important. In my journey, as I look back on my journey thus far, I've always worked at the intersection of legacy and digital media, right? Where they converge is really where I found some of my most exciting work. And so I get a call to go direct is where I started with them. Larry, they wanted someone who could make the work look really good, but they weren't used to the budgets that they had at CNN. And someone who had been hired by them to work on their social media was like, I know a guy. And I went in there, I clicked really quickly with Larry and the rest of his team. And 750 episodes, 3.5 years later, an Emmy nomination even. I had worked for so many, I just directed hours and hours, hundreds of hours of television at that point, live to tape television. But through it all, Larry really wanted to, and Carlos Slim, who financed the endeavor, really wanted to figure out his place in the new. He had this thing that I'll always remember. He just said, don't knock the new, right? Larry had a really smart, open mind for and a understanding that inevitably things change, and changing with them is really important. So, while I was at the company was called Aura TV, I was not full time there. I was kind of like a permalance person. I directed sketches with Larry and like John Heater that went on, their YouTube channel. I actually directed also a show that had with Jesse Ventura that had more of a digital angle to it. I also directed a couple independent web series and short films that received a fair degree of notoriety. And I was continuing to always work in that creator economy piece because I've always had this knowledge that that's where I've found success, and B, I've believed that's where the future is headed. And so, that time in my career was really about understanding really deeply how legacy and digital could really function together.
And the legacy or the Larry King thing, was that show was on Hulu, or where was that show?
Yeah. So it was distributed on a couple different places. It was distributed on Hulu, yeah, and then it was also on RT. It was Russian television. It was syndicated in a couple different places. It was also Aura also tried to build their own platform, which I wasn't driving that business, but I always felt like trying to do two really challenging things at once was always an interesting choice. I think if they had focused more on really making YouTube their home, they would have found a lot more success. But we worked closely with YouTube. We did a lot during one of the presidential elections. We did a live broadcast and covered that. Did like 5 hours straight live on YouTube as part of a political hub that they'd built. Again, it was just all about trying to figure out where things were going and how to take advantage of that.
And was that like a standard interview show?
Oh yeah, I mean it was very much the Larry King experience. The only difference was we didn't take calls. It was like a technology piece we were all just trying to figure out. But Larry would have guests come in live from satellite. He would have a lot of guests mostly come in through the studio. We converted an old church annex in Glendale into a studio, and Larry would sit down and people would come in and you'd do 30 minutes with them, and they'd leave, and we would often shoot 2 or 3 a day, shooting and we were constantly putting out 5 episodes a week. Yeah,
that's amazing. And then were you getting any kind of audience metrics to even, could you tell if anybody was actually watching it?
I mean, Hulu and RT kept renewing it, but I wasn't, at that point in my career, I wasn't at a point where I was privy to much data, right? And because they had chosen to build their own platform rather than distribute on YouTube, I didn't see a lot of numbers there either. But, there's always this sense that we were successful, that we were making a lot of impact on the culture. There's a DuckTales clip that I directed that's very well known. But it always felt like we were one step away from the success that the producers were endeavoring to achieve and the leadership was endeavoring to achieve, but we were relevant. And I think that spoke more than anything to just the place that digital had in people's lives at the time. This is 2013, 14, 15, right? And the relationship of the audience to digitally native formats and shows was rapidly evolving. And I think a lot of it had to do with timing.
Well, it just seems like the streamers have really struggled with doing things like news or talk shows. Like Netflix has, started and canceled several talk shows. Like HBO Max never quite figured out how to integrate CNN content into it. So it seems like the streamers just haven't really taken that genre or that format very seriously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I imagine it's also probably a tough thing for them to crack, right? What I'm really interested in, one of the things that I love about digital, YouTube, the social media aspect, the user-generated aspect of media now, is that, things can evolve in a bit more of an organic way, right? It almost feels like the entertainment industry is becoming kind of the thing that the audience wants it to be more and more. I think about there was a wonderful article I read kind of about the new late night, right? About how shows like Subway Takes and Chicken Shop Date are the new late night, right? And it's so interesting that they so organically came to be, right? And it speaks to this new era we have where the audience is in a way more in the driver's seat. And I think especially when it comes to something like news, it would make sense that the streamers might have some challenges, because especially with something about the actual understanding of life or the understanding of the people that create our culture, YouTube is really becoming that home, right? And I think that would make sense.
Yeah, and like most of the, other than Netflix, most of the streamers still don't have like an algorithmic distribution. So like, if you're going to feature Larry King versus some show that you spent $100 million on, you're going to feature the show, because it like they're going for like a mass audience. So it's probably a lot easier to find your audience on YouTube for something that's a little bit more less for like a mass audience. So you did that, but then you've also like worked more on the YouTube side. Like I saw that you, at some point, you worked with MrBeast in some capacity, and you also worked for The Rock to help him launch his YouTube channel. So talk to me about like that part of your career. Was that like, were you acting like as a producer, or like were you trying to become like a manager for YouTubers? Like where did you fit into kind of like the creator economy ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'm always, the creator economy makes you a lot of things, right? But ultimately, I consider myself a creator. I'm not an audience-facing creator, but I'm a creative individual that works with other creators to help them tell their stories and create stories for people that that want to watch them. I was directing Larry King's talk show, and I was Studio 71 actually reached out to me. They wanted to, Dwayne Johnson The Rock was preparing to launch a YouTube channel, and they really wanted to make this a big event, but there were creative challenges by the team that was currently at Studio 71 trying to find content that Dwayne would get excited about, that would make sense for him logistically, and they were on the hunt for a new executive producer, creative lead that would be able to realize whatever it meant for Dwayne Johnson at the height of his, especially 2015, 2016 Dwayne, right? Like really, he was reaching a really high spot in his career, and celebrity hadn't really worked on YouTube, right? Kevin Hart was doing good work, but it hadn't maybe had the impact that it would seem it should. So I was brought in. I had a strategy to lean into both a hybrid of scripted and unscripted content. Our two launch videos were first a fake trailer for a movie that actually was almost like an anti-joke that Dwayne was coming to YouTube, that we premiered at VidCon, and then a mega collab with some of the biggest creators on the platform at the time, back to back in a video with Dwayne. And we launched, and we reached 1 million subscribers in just 11 days. We were the fastest growing channel on YouTube, I think, for like 2 of those days. And it was that was the first moment in my career where I was able to achieve something that really, I think, broke through into the culture and really showed me that I have an ability to collaborate with others to tell stories that can really impact the algorithm and thus be seen by a lot of people. And from there, we were just off to the races with Dwayne. We produced 100 videos in a year. We were doing 2 videos a week, and a lot of these videos were very ambitious. We made an original. Disney came to us for, the channel was doing well. Disney came to us and said, hey, we can give you 15 minutes with Lin-Manuel Miranda and Dwayne at a junket. What would you like to make? And my answer was, how about a 15-minute original musical? And Disney went for it, and they gave us a budget, and in just 3 weeks, we produced an original 15-minute musical called Millennials the Musical. That again really hit the culture in a powerful way, and not only received a lot of views, but every Fox affiliate in the country picked it up. On Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos and Michael Strahan argued about whether or not it was real, and it was just really good, fun content that all the creators were in it. They shared it. We did a huge campaign with Logan Paul to support Baywatch. We were also doing unscripted content. Like there's a Rock Reacts video out there where he reacts to his first wrestling match that I think has north of 50 million views right now. And through it all, like I think that experience especially, like I really loved YouTube, but I think that experience really led me to realize the potential of YouTube and made me realize really where it really cemented in me this belief that YouTube was headed to be this massive part of the entertainment landscape. And then from there, I started a company after working with Dwayne for over a year where we would build other channels for actors and athletes. You know, the pandemic, that was a tough time. I think it hindered a lot of growth, especially in like places that, you know, notable names felt was risky. Like, you know, doing YouTube, it's a different endeavor. The economics are, you know, especially back in, you know, 2020, you know, the economics were not as clear as how you could build something in a powerful business there. I think they're still evolving now, right? But then I got a call from Jimmy Donaldson and his team. I flew out to North Carolina for what was meant to be 2 weeks. I ended up staying there for 6 months. You know, Jimmy Donaldson is MrBeast. I produced a couple of videos there. I was a lead producer on one of their at the time their biggest stunt, Train versus Giant Pit. I dug a 30,000 cubic yard hole in Texas in limestone. I bought a 150-ton locomotive and you know moved it across Texas on the back of a truck. Built 1,000 feet of rail and we sent the train flying into this giant hole, and it was this huge stunt, this huge logistical challenge. I think that video has well over 200 million views now. And both of those experiences, you know, being at MrBeast, a lot of people aspire that, like that, especially for a lot of the young people that are there, like that is like the dream of dreams to be there, right? And it was a place where people were really actualizing those dreams, and it was amazing to be around, and I was so grateful to be there. But you know, I crashed the train, and there was a young producer that I was kind of mentoring, I guess, and he was there on set with me in Texas, and it was kind of the quiet of the end of the day, and he was like, "So is that the coolest thing you've ever done?" And I had this moment that sounds like it's written maybe, but it really, really was true. I was just like, no, man, because like I've found, you know, wonderful moments between actors on a set, and found truth there, and that's kind of really what I'm about. And it's kind of this realization moment where I was like, I've done the unscripted YouTube thing, and I'm so grateful that I have, but I knew at that moment that I needed to come back to LA and somehow figure out how to, you know, take these things that I'd learned and turn them into the opportunity to make scripted entertainment. I was thinking about even potentially becoming an assistant in a writer's room, if they would have me, you know, start again at your beginnings, if you will. But fortunately, I discovered, you know, this new world.
Yeah. So quick question about like the MrBeast thing is, did that open your eyes at all about like what was possible for a creator, in the sense of like he's now spending upwards of like $3 million per video? Obviously, that video probably costs a shit ton of money. Like in terms of like you look at the per episode costs on TV. So if YouTube, which are in the millions of dollars, somewhere around, you know, for a lower budget TV show is somewhere like $2 to $3 million per episode. Obviously, with the Game of Thrones or Stranger Things, they could get to much higher. But did that open your eyes of like maybe this is the future of YouTube? Is it's eventually just going to become TV?
Yeah, I mean, I just one of the things that's really wonderful when you work there is the conviction that, you know, there's a certainty that YouTube is really going to be perhaps the destination in a way for entertainment, and also the conviction that you tell the best possible story with what you got, and that is the way to do things. And they do. Like, I think there's certainly a sense that they over there at MrBeast, they're, you know, there's a little Wild West mentality, but they're really actually very thoughtful about what they do, and just they want to give the audience the best possible experience. And I believed in that. I believed in that since I studied film, but to see it practiced so passionately and authentically was a great refresher in what really matters when you make content. And absolutely, yeah, YouTube is is going to continue to grow and it's going to redefine how we think about the mechanisms that we receive entertainment. And I absolutely agree with you that we are headed towards, premium YouTube. I think actually microdramas are an indicator of how that shape will evolve.
So you talked about like maybe going back to a traditional writer's room. So you're with the most popular creator in the world, and you're thinking about going to get what would be considered a traditional Hollywood job. Hollywood obviously is going through a bit of a recession right now, where a lot of the streamers and studios are spending a lot less on content, whereas the creator economy is on the upswing. What are your thoughts on someone who's wants to break into Hollywood today for the type of flexibility to be able to, because a lot of creators are now hiring professional editors and producers and set designers and stuff like that. What do you think about like someone who's trying to get into Hollywood today, like how flexible they should be to kind of float between these two different worlds? Because obviously in the Hollywood world, like there are unions, the pay scales are different. Like, what are your thoughts on like if you're a professional editor who maybe had a job editing a reality TV show for Bravo, but you're low on work and you're looking at what's going on in the creator economy, should there be more flexibility there in terms of moving in between those two different worlds?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll first say this is, I think it's almost like we should start questioning the questions that we're asking, right? So it's like, what does it really mean to break into Hollywood, if we really think about that, right? What is it? To me, that means that you're compensated in a sustainable way, and potentially in a very powerful way, to do the things that you love at the intersection of art and commerce. I think that's what it means to break into Hollywood. At least that's how I define it, right? And if that's the case, you can do now. The only reason that I left MrBeast to figure out and potentially take that entry level job was I just love scripted storytelling. I love movies and TV. I love actors and writers and directors and cinematographers and editors and all the other departments that are so important coming together to create this illusion that people love to watch that ultimately endeavors to tell some kind of truth. That's what I love, and that was the one thing that, besides Outliers, was missing from the digital ecosystem, right? It's generally been a unscripted space. But now that's completely changing, and it's going to change radically month by month, year by year. It is just radically going to change. And for people, I work with a lot of those people that are finding themselves, there's not as much work as they have been able to receive in previous years. And I just think two things are important. I think it's vitally important that you watch YouTube. There is something on YouTube for everybody. I just had a meeting last night with a couple TV producers from England who are trying to figure out microdramas, and I just told them, let the algorithm learn you. Search for things on YouTube. Search for anything that you like. It's probably there, and there's probably a few people telling you stories about it and giving you things to watch about it that you're going to really, really like, as long as you come with an open mind. And then I think it's really important that those people who maybe come from a more traditional background, you really have to have an open mind. You really have to understand that you are in something that is still very new and has a lot of the shapes of film and television, especially on the business side of things, but it's figuring itself out. And it's been built by people who are just now getting a seat at the larger table of the of the entertainment industry. So be a have beginner's mind. Be a student of the world that you're entering, and bring your experiences and bring your knowledge. But don't think certainly do not think you know how to do it better than the people who have been doing it, because that's how we end up with things like Quibi, or that's how it's a lack of meeting on common ground that I think results in those misfires of traditional entering digital. And only on common ground is where the future will be forged. So just keep an open mind and make yourself a student of the medium that you're entering.
Should they think any differently about the economics as they're floating between the traditional Hollywood world and the creator economy? Like, in terms of like maybe if it's a creator economy thing, like thinking about revenue share or some other kind of more creative way of generating revenue versus just this is how much it costs to work with me kind of thing.
Well, and also relationship building, right? I think that a lot of, I think there's more of a sense, especially because, creators often build their own channels and their own businesses. They start out literally in bedrooms and in backyards, and so there's this sense that you've got to prove not only that you are good at what you do, but that you are good at what you do in their environment, which they worked so hard to build with sleepless nights and sacrifice, right? And then there could potentially, I don't think that most YouTube creators are going to be offering participation unless you're at a really high level. But with microdramas, that is absolutely something that is possible. Again, we're in a really early stage where a lot of people need people to take risks with them. So absolutely, back-end participation is possible when it comes to some of these, for example, these microdrama apps. But it's going to be a case-by-case thing. We're in the Wild West, but now there's a sheriff's office and a train station. But we're still in the Wild West, and so it's important to have that mindset. You're comparing an industry that is, maybe at best 20 years old to an industry that's over 100 years old. And the growth of an industry tends to be fairly, I think, logarithmic, right? Especially when it comes to becoming really sophisticated. So, we're seeing a rapid, evolution of everything in digital, but it's still evolving, and it's important to keep that in mind too.
So let's talk about microdramas. To the best of your memory, when did you become aware of their existence? Because it started in China, right? Yeah, so,
while during the pandemic, China was able to figure out, I think, kind of what Quibi, I made a show with Quibi, and I think Katzenberg and his team were picking up on the winds of change that they executed in a way that just wasn't quite the right model. And during that time, China, I think, figured it out. I think it's useful to reframe what a microdrama is, right? What is a movie? A movie is a collection of scenes. And those scenes, when watched in order, create a series of dramatic questions that we call plot that people enjoy and want to pay for to watch, right? And what if every scene in your movie was 90 seconds or less? And what if your movie was shot in a vertical aspect ratio? And additionally, what if your movie had to just start in the middle of intense action because your movie played on social media, right? And then additionally, what if the first 10 minutes of every movie that the app that your movie was on had were free? And then after that first 10 episodes, 10 minutes, you paid per episode to watch that movie, roughly every 90 seconds. You would have a microdrama. And I think it's worth mentioning that that the average person pays roughly $15 to watch a microdrama, which is, as far as a unit economic thing, a movie with no known actors and no known IP behind it. Again, that's starting to change, but that's really, I remember where I was over there. Someone sent me an article, a producer that I'd met over, while I had briefly interviewed to potentially work at Darman. And I met a producer there, and they sent me an article about these things called short dramas. And I started reading this article, and immediately, because anytime a scripted thing is happening in digital, my antenna perks up. Because I've wanted scripted and digital work every time someone says it has. Quibi, YouTube Red, Sony Crackle. I've wanted it to work. I've wanted it to be real. I've wanted the audience to finally be, voraciously desirous of these of scripted programming. Those things, it was never true. When I started to dig on these more and more and more, the other shoe never dropped. There was no, with the exception of, they put a lot of money behind the marketing. People really love these stories. And so I just started to rapidly pursue this space, which ultimately led me to the Holy Water and My Drama, who we entered into a deal to start making them.
So talk me through that. So you're aware, your friend sends you an article about it. Approximately how long ago was that?
Well, for roughly 5 months, I actually thought it would really make a lot of sense to build my own app with venture capital. But, the thing investors would keep asking me is have you made a microdrama? And I've made almost everything else besides a microdrama, but I was like, okay, I'll go make a microdrama. And around that time, I was also introduced by a colleague to my drama. And, especially back then, this is like the middle of 2024. No, I'm sorry. This is at this point, it's like late 24. And at that time, the quality piece was especially rough. A lot of these shows are very low budget, but they're also often made by people that don't really understand, American culture. A lot of shows were being localized from Chinese narratives. So the quality was really, it was mixed, but it was generally pretty rough, right? So I was going around town saying there's a way to elevate these, but not to turn TV shows into microdramas. There's a way to make really elevated microdramas that I believe the audience will want even more. At the end of the day, quality can be a consumer preference, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to make the thing that people like, and you have to make it better. If people want tacos, you want to give them great tacos, you can't give them chocolate cake. They want tacos, right? So, I met with Holy Water My Drama, and the founders, Anatoly and Bogdan, they really wanted to give me that chance. They really led with this idea that, Scott, we like your vision. We want to see you realize your vision. We will give you a budget to make a series, actually a 2-series deal, of which my newest series, Playback, is the second in that deal. We will participate in a revenue share model, and we really want to see, we'll give you a lot of feedback. We'll have our teams, push on you, but if you disagree, you can go your way. And I value all collaboration. These are people who have made, at that point, over 100 microdramas at their company. So I really wanted to learn from them. And we actually didn't ever really fundamentally disagree on anything. We really worked together well. And we were able to roughly 4 months after signing the deal, our first series came out. It's called The Diamond Rose. It's a story about, it is very much a vertical. It is a story about a young woman who, because her father gets into gambling debts with the mob, decides to become a stripper, and to pay off his debts. And she, along the way, she falls in love with the club owner, and it really becomes a thriller set in a world of crime with so many twists and turns and devilish antagonists and beautiful love scenes. And that show did really, really well for my drama. It received, it got 20 million views on its first day of release on the platform. And the Washington Post said that it was almost a shame to see it up on the small screen. And even more importantly, I do think it was able to be a part of a conversation towards better quality. And I was really proud of how we made it. We endeavored to make it with. I'm stealing this from a filmmaker I really admire, Danny Boyle, but the texture of a film is really affected by the honor with which you make it. And we really wanted to make a set where people felt like they could take creative risks and do great work in the hope that it would end up on the screen. And the audience response has been tremendous. We receive fan mail still. There are people who support us in our new series that live in different countries, and it also allowed me to be on shows like this and shape the conversation around this emerging medium.
So My Drama is one of these microdrama apps, right? Correct. And so as you alluded to, so the way you open up the app, you get to sample the first few episodes of the series. These series are made to be addictive. Each episode usually ends on some kind of cliffhanger. So the idea is they watch the first 5 episodes or so, and then it starts. It's not a subscription app. It's actually you're buying tokens, right? And then you're unlocking more and more episodes. And there's reports that people are spending upwards of $80 a month on these things. So you talk to My Drama, you pitched them a show. Is that how it is, or they just gave you kind of a lump sum and said go do something with this?
Oh no, we develop our shows, of course, with them and make sure that they're excited about the series. But they just wanted to make sure that it was a romance. I think that's really important. Still, our newest series, Playback, is a musical, but it's still a romance. And we're just doubling down on the things that we learned. But yeah, I pitched the show, and he actually just the co-CEO Anatoly, he greenlit it right there, and but they do give a high degree of trust. They almost have to because of the amount of shows that they're making, and the sheer logistical exercise that is giving notes on that many shows. But yeah, we're constantly checking in. They're approving cast. They're approving things like wardrobe, and they're keeping eyes on the budget. But overall, it was a hybrid, of trust and also oversight.
And are you writing the script in that instance?
I co-wrote the script with another writer, Elise Murray, and I believe in a director-centric model too. We're currently getting ready to do some new shows, and I'm not directing all of them. And I really believe in almost like Pixar's model of a brain trust. So at budget levels like this, the director is the captain of their ship, and it necessitates some degree of creative rewriting. But yeah, I co-wrote it. The scripts on these are deceptively difficult, and I don't say that as a warning. I say that as an invitation to an adventure. I think when you have to have a plot point every roughly minute for at least the first 20 minutes, and then you actually can slow things down a bit once you've gotten people invested in the story. There's a lot of threads you create, and I think some shows, they'll just stop following those threads. You'll be like, what happened to that guy that guy killed? Wait, are there no consequences for that? But if you really endeavor to wrap up all the threads, it can kind of turn into this intricate narrative puzzle. But wow, on playback for the Diamond Rose, I'm really proud of that work. But playback endeavors to really double down on this idea that we can carry a lot of narrative threads that can all ideally lead to a massive payoff at the end, and obviously maximize retention along the way. And I'm finessing a few things here and there, solving a little problem with ADR here and there. Editing is ultimately a process of writing, but I really believe you can do some of the best work of your life in this medium. My new series, Playback, I've never been more proud of something I've made, and that to me is a heartening thing about the future of where this is going.
So you keep on mentioning the budget. Famously, microdramas have a budget of a few $100,000 for the entire series versus, a TV show, which could be a couple $1 million per episode. So in that case, in terms of casting, how are you? Is it just posting on Craigslist? Are you how involved is that entire process of finding the cast for it? I'm guessing it's a relatively small cast, only a few location type of thing in order to save money and stuff like that. So talk about how you have to work with a smaller budget.
It's interesting in some ways. Not I've especially in the last 7 years or so, I've worked with bigger budgets, but these are not. It's on a permanent basis, these are not necessarily the smallest budgets I've ever worked with, right? I've always been a really scrappy filmmaker. The indie spirit is alive and well in me. In terms of casting, we do hire a casting director, and we do a series of auditions, taped auditions, then callbacks, and finally chem reads. Casting is really important to us. The chemistry of the lead actors is a really important thing in a romance, and right now, romances tends to be what these are. Although I'm seeing a lot more interest, really, especially in the last couple of months, into exploring comedy, into exploring horror, thrillers, procedurals. We're really seeing a true ramp up in the exploration of other genres. But, it just comes down to how you are as a filmmaker, right? You only shoot one location a day because a company move would destroy you. But you'd use locations that in a way have many locations within them, right? So you set your show and you write it with the budget in mind. It's just a lot of little decisions that keep the budget tight. And I'll be very transparent. We are in a time right now where I think there are many people who are taking, obviously we pay everyone that we work with, but there's a bit of a speculative bet that this is going to lead to larger budgets, and people want to get experience now. They want to get this on their resume now. And so really talented, wonderful people are willing to work at not the highest rate of their entire lives. But also, one of the things early on when we put, the casting of our first series out is, the quality of the work. Everything in microdramas tends to be a bit of a microcosm of the larger entertainment world, right? And in the same way that sometimes actors will take a pay cut to be in a prestige film, a lot of these actors, even sometimes the crew, are willing to take a bit of a pay cut from their highest rates to be able to be in something where we have a lot more creative autonomy. Most production companies right now are not involved in the writing, production, and editing of the show. That's something that is not unique, but fairly novel about Second Rodeo. And that opportunity to work is something that I think people pursue, especially the actors.
And are these things shot in seasons, or is it like manga where it's just can stretch on for hundreds and hundreds of episodes and just keep on going with no like end in sight, or is there like a defined like season with like a story arc that's like definitively ending? Like how is it approached?
So, I mean, we're still figuring it out. I mean, the best thing to contextualize it within is this idea that we are still in the days where they figured out that TV was hour and a half hour, and you should interrupt the show with breaks, right? But it's more structurally, I think, like a movie than a TV show. These shows tend to be roughly 70 to 90 minute contained narratives that resolve, right? But they are also serialized, and that something happens every episode. But it's not like a novel plot that is resolved. Any good scene usually has a problem that results in conflict, that results in a complicating resolution, right? And that's a lot how microdramas are. But we block shoot them like a movie, right? So all the scenes in the warehouse are in the warehouse. All the scenes at the club are in the club. All the scenes, out in the field are in the field. And we shoot them like that. It's production wise, it's not dissimilar to an indie movie. I would say the production aspect of these is less different certainly than writing and post production are.
So so they're mostly paid through these like actual payments, through these tokens and stuff like that. But I actually read recently that some of these microdramas are starting to introduce advertising. Seems to me like advertising would be great for this, because every single 90 seconds there's a shot for there's a chance for an ad break, and then you could force people to watch an ad as a way to open it to unlock the next episode. So you have like a captive audience that has to sit there on their phone and play that ad. What do you think the opportunity is there? Do you think advertising is even bigger opportunity for microdramas?
I mean, again, I believe that microdramas are a very powerful and important piece of an iceberg that we are seeing, that is really the proliferation of the phone and digital as a new medium. And it is going to be, I think, the most powerful in terms of the potential of revenue and opportunities for brands and companies and all that's ever happened, because of, we don't carry TVs everywhere we go, but we carry our phones everywhere we go. I said this at a panel yesterday. I was like, we went into rooms to dream in the dark, to watch movies. We brought televisions into our living rooms to share stories with our families and friends, and sometimes be alone. What does it mean when we carry the stories we love in our pockets everywhere we go? I think that's going to be really, we're already seeing it be a powerful thing, and it's going to just get bigger and bigger. But also, I think the opportunity for brand partnerships and branded entertainment that feels native to the story will be huge here. Platform and distribution partnerships for existing IP. I also think creator-led IP development and long-term upside will be really powerful. We have Hannah Stocking, one of the Forbes top 50 creator in our newest series, Playback. And Hannah has over 78 million total followers across, all of social media. She's also wonderful in the part, and because of that, we're able to explore conversations with other creators who want to get into this, who want to get into scripted, but maybe Hollywood never really wanted to give them that opportunity that they got really excited about, right? And creators are really good at creating their own opportunities. So this is a really great intersection between, scripted storytelling and the creator economy. And also just there's an ability to create repeatable production frameworks that I think will be really powerful. But yeah, advertising, like we've seen a couple branded microdramas. I think there's a couple that we're potentially working towards. I think something I hear a lot is why can't the next Friends, why can't they meet up at a Starbucks, every day? But it doesn't have to be like in your face. People go to Starbucks every day. Why not see our characters go to Starbucks, right? And brands, I think, more and more are really aware that they don't really need to hit audiences over the head. In fact, it may be more effective to be a little more subtle in their approach when it comes to advertising. And with that belief come a lot of opportunities to weave them into narratives. We even have some product placement in our series Playback. We have Teenage Engineering showcases some of their synthesizers in our show.
And how much are you thinking about like creators in your casting? Like I have heard that like some creators are getting cast in these micro dramas. Like, is that part of is that part of the strategy? Is like, can we find this creator who might not have a ton of acting experience but has this large already existing following? Like, how much are you kind of thinking about that?
I mean, I think of creators in the same way that I might think of the unrealized potential of maybe how people have thought of TV actors coming to indie films, right? For example, maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt wasn't getting the roles that he was hoping for from, larger, bigger projects after Third Rock from the Sun, and he went to indie film to start to realize and show the world those roles, and now he's able to do, massive movies. I think the same thing can be true for creators. I have a lot of affinity for creators. I really respect them. We all hustle in this business, and that is never more true than that of creators. And again, and this is something I was just talking to an agent at an agency recently about how they're just seeing creators take the craft of acting more seriously. Acting is a craft, and to do a great performance requires discipline and work. And I'm seeing more and more creators take that seriously. And I think as creators start to use their incredible work ethic and talent and then express it through the trained craft of acting, we're going to see some really interesting people emerge from that.
So we've seen some news recently that companies like Paramount and Disney, they're launching vertical video feeds within their streaming apps for the mobile versions of them. But it seems like what they're going to be doing is pretty lame initially. Like, it's just going to be taking clips from their already existing content libraries and repurposing it. Like, do you think like Disney should be finding some like minor Marvel character and hiring someone like you to create like a vertical video like mini series with that like, is that where you think this is heading, or it should head? I'm trying to create that opportunity. There's some conversation. It's very early. There's nothing really very concrete happening yet. But I have been, a couple really notable actors have come through our offices in the last couple months who really want to try to figure something out. And I think, corporations, for a variety of reasons, have to be very thoughtful about what they do with their IP. But absolutely, like, I don't believe this is a fad. Now, it will evolve. We're not going to be watching microdramas as they are 3 years from now. They're going to evolve into something else. We might call them something else. But they will have, in the same way that YouTube, it used to be insane to make a YouTube video that was longer than 5 minutes. You were out of your mind. Now it is not ideal to make one that is less than 15, and if you can get to 30, that's great, right? So digital evolves a lot, and no one's deciding that it evolves. It happens much more organically than it does in something that's, like TV or film, especially like something like TV, especially traditional TV. But yes, I think that right now, look, no one wants to be Quibi 2.0, right? That is a very important cautionary tale that happened. And for publicly traded companies, they have to be especially careful about that. But they are testing, and they are learning, and they're getting data. And I am very confident that they are going to be surprised at how powerful that data is. And once they get to see how some of their clips perform when it comes into this vertical form factor, they're going to start. That experimentation is going to turn into action pretty quickly. Because, again, this is a new medium. And as people discover the power of that there is a new medium in our lives, we will see action quickly from that. So when you look ahead 3 years from now, what do you want to be doing that you're not doing now? Like, would it be that you want to be doing a microdrama that has the per minute cost of like a TV show in terms of production budgets? Do you want to be like a showrunner who's like doing a whole bunch of different shows? Like, what do you think about like where you could be 3 years from now?
3 years from now, and I smile because I'm at a point in my career and what's happening in microdramas, and I really care about sharing hope and positivity, especially in times where we're in such both as an industry and as a world of challenges and metamorphosis and everything. Like, I Second Rodeo, I want to build into a place where, yes, the per minute budgets have increased. They must ultimately, and so that we can be giving lots of people, there's not really a good middle class for people in the entertainment industry right now, especially if you want to be doing scripted storytelling. I don't mean just writers and directors. I mean, costumers. I mean editors. I mean all the people that endeavor to tell scripted storytelling. It's either you're struggling or you're making a lot of money. And I think that the rise of digital native scripted storytelling can help build that middle class again. And I want to, yeah, I think showrunner is probably the best word. I'm still directing from time to time, but I also have, Second Rodeo has a brain trust of really wonderful creative people who come together in that really wonderful selfless act of creativity when everyone believes in the project. And we're allowing diverse new voices of all types to tell stories that haven't been told before in ways that make this industry a little more stable for people and give more opportunities to do the thing that I love. I try to say as often as I can that Second Rodeo is a place where people can actualize their dreams. One of my actors on playback wrote me a letter afterwards that really was meaningful to me, and she said, "Every day on set felt like a celebration of actualizing our dreams, and art should be a celebration." And that meant a lot to me that she would write that about our set, and I hope that every one of our sets can be like that, because no one comes to this industry to just make money. There's something else driving them. There's some part of them that they feel if they could, give that back to the world, it would help them understand something about the world and maybe make a contribution to this thing that we're all doing. And I want to be able to be in a leadership role, allowing as many people as possible to be doing the thing they love and building not only a sustainable but hopefully a thriving life doing that.
Yeah, there's already examples of microdrama actors, like their microdramas, like launching their careers, like profiles of. I remember reading about this one guy who was struggling to like get extra roles in like traditional things, and now he's like in a million different microdramas, and he has like millions of followers on Instagram and like a huge fan base and stuff like that. So it's already starting to happen.
If you love acting, if you actually love acting, if you actually love directing, if you actually love writing, you can be if you love any of these crafts, you can be doing it, And love does not pay the bills, of course. Passion does not pay the bills, but you can be paid to do the thing that you love. And I think at every point in someone's career, it's important to get reps. It's important to make things and to learn about yourself as a creative individual. But there is no shortage of work to be doing now. Obviously, the economics are evolving, but there is a very exciting place to be doing work that you love out there. Be careful, though. There's some places that you got to be cautious. This is still, the entertainment industry is. It has to be navigated with care. But if you look in the right places and you practice the right blend of skepticism and optimism, there's good work to be had. And I want to share that with people.
Okay, Scott, those were all the questions I had for you. Where can people find you online?
You can the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Also, if you go to oursecondrodeo.com, you can learn about our company. But I want to say also, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I'm always looking for new people to collaborate with. I try to respond as much as I can. We're interested in building with people. I really believe that is it is the time to build.
Awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for your time.